Okay, we can get started. I'll call the meeting to order. Clerk Barry, if you'd like to call the roll.
Supervisor Kirsten.
Here.
Treasurer Elliott. Treasurer Elliott.
Here.
Trustee Anderson.
Here.
Trustee Vosberg. Trustee Demink.
Here.
Clerk Barry is here. Trustee Joseph is in transit.
Okay, item number 3 is a continued discussion and review of the proposed fiscal year 2022 budget. With that being said, since we last met, just make a few comments before we turn it over to Vicki, Treasurer Bauer, or Finance Director Bauer. Since the last meeting, there's a supplemental added to your books. We expanded on some questions that were relayed to her over the past week. We presented some further options that will be discussed tonight. And then also in that supplemental, you'll see some staffing and some personnel alterations and movements that are proposed in there. So with that being said, Vicki, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. Yep, this is our second budget review as a group. I did have some questions that had come in, and we will be addressing those as we go through. The first thing I want to cover is everything that you were already submitted back in October. On the 22nd, you guys got the digital version, and then November 8th, everybody got the books. That is, nothing has changed with the exception of what you see up here. And actually, everybody has been given a supplementary thing to add to their budget books. All right, so the net changes since the first time you've seen this is a reduction to general fund of $87,000. Briefly going over it, you have a small item in supervisor's office for a stipend. They have a small, actually a rebalancing of personnel that our HR director will be getting into in a little bit, but they've rebalanced their staffing with a net effect of about $10,000 to $12,000 reduction. And then in F&O, there's a reduction of 1 employee. Again, like we were talking, we have a very open lines of communication. If anybody has any questions, they can come in and sit down and go over the budget at any time. We pull in any of the staff that needs to be present for the review of it. Actually, Kathy Vosberg came in and she had some budget review questions. And anytime somebody has one, we want to make sure everybody is on the same page and gets that same information. So we're going to go over some of the questions she had highlighted. The first one is our changes in personnel and the effect on the budget, and I'm going to hand that over to Steve to go over.
Thank you. The sheet that you saw and the net reduction was a compilation of HR and supervisors working with 2 departments. First, to take the clerk's office, working with Clerk Barry, we consolidated one of the coordinator positions into one. Further discussion will come. And since some of that is labor related, perhaps we should have those conversations one-on-one initially in the preliminary steps. But what it does end up doing is a net reduction in cost in that office contributing to it. The second part was a change in reduction in personnel in facilities and operations. As we are utilizing a more hybrid model of service delivery with commercial contracting and other changes they are making, we are able to do that and reduce the permanent full-time staff in that manner. The stipend was arrived at as in cooperation with the labor group representing the position to consider what had changed in the up in the supervisor's area, how we were staffing, utilizing the personnel, and we've actually had some of that discussion over time. So we ended up coming to agreement on that we think is workable for both parties. Just as an overview on personnel this year, we are, due to the changes the board made in self-insurance funding we've talked about before, we have had a good year and project to have a continuing good year of controlling medical costs. We will have 165 full-time personnel, and that is 3.58 per 1,000 residents, and the Michigan average for our public employees is 4. So we're right in the right category, slightly under for the average of employees per 1,000 residents served. We have 44 what we call permanent part-time employees, which bulk of which come in public safety. Those employees are featured as paid or part-time firefighters and several other positions that are on a permanent part-time basis. So if in total, if we had staffed all of the part-time hours, the equivalent full-time personnel would require an additional 23 people at a cost over $2.2 million. So the hybrid workforce, that and the commercial contractors to supplement what we presently have as career employees, obviously would be substantially different. So that has proved to be positive. Public safety expenses are per capita 392, and general government employees costs are 218 per capita. So we have some very good numbers when we compare to the bigger picture. The other thing I'd like to note is the supervisor and HR offices will be continuing to work with the departments on realignment as we go forward. I think we probably reached the peak of full-time staffing, marginally 1 or 2 positions as we change. But what we certainly are going to be looking at is the continued realignment process and modifications as knowledge, skills, and abilities requirements change. We'll be changing the nature of the workforce. So that will result in some, I think, different ways we go forward and present funding for permanent positions. So overall, those are the changes to date. As Vicki indicated, she's indicated what general ledger items that strikes, and we'll be continuing the analysis. Again, I encourage anybody who wants to have a discussion about particular individual personnel issues to come and talk to us one-on-one so that we can discuss how that may or may not impact the overall workforce, and always being respectful of our collective bargaining agreements. So.
Yes, Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you. So you had sent an email dated November 15, I think, showing the movement of personnel. Is that from you? That you sent to Vicki and then Vicki sent?
Yes.
To me,
Yeah,
right, so
the
that's
one
what-
that we just articulated, yeah, we
The one you
articulated
just
and
talked about,
discerned
that's
more.
in the
Yes.
email. Then you also said some other things. Is that in our handouts?
That is not. The rest of the memo is a memo regarding a blended workforce and the utilization of personnel and the individual employee costs. Is that, trustee, that's the one you're referring to, I believe?
I don't know. I see
Yeah,
that
it's not in your budget handout,
you
no.
talked about the medical insurance change, and that's reflected in this budget change.
That is
like
reflected.
$20,000?
Yes, those are-
$20,000?
Those are reflected in there, yes.
Okay, but then the other stuff, you're just adding that. That's free stuff you're adding that's not impacting the budget.
That is correct.
Okay.
That's extra bonus rounds. If you subscribe now, you get a free one.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Okay. Seeing no further questions on that review item. The next one is the SAD cost analysis to the township. The engineering and treasury department are going to talk on that briefly.
So Vicki asked me to look at what we cost out as far as our administration costs and things like that. Now, every special assessment district that we approve has certain items that are included in there, and one of them is our legal and administration. We charge 3% in the cost of the special assessment. Special assessments are all, yes.
Before you continue, is that in our handout?
No, but I have some things to give you.
Yeah, if we could,
Yep,
would that help
yep,
us following
yep,
along what you're saying?
yep.
Thank you.
So according to our APO, the township administers the special assessment districts. They establish the district, do the gathering of the cost estimate, things like that, provide the cost of the improvement, and then they levy and collect the special assessments. And if you see in the front or the top of that sheet, it describes that. And then I give you a part of the APO that all costs of the township are charged to the special assessment districts. And then on the bottom, I have given you a breakdown of an example of what, when the engineer goes out and does the estimate of cost, these are the figures that, or these are the things that he will look at, which will be construction awarded cost. There's a contingency in all of the special assessment districts at 10%. Bidding and design is usually 10%. Legal and administration, which includes, like, if we have to bond, all of the treasurers and clerical things like billing and everything else is included in that 3%. And then you have your engineering costs, which are your inspections and the administration of the cost of the construction itself.
May I follow up? Thank you. So that the 10% of those, the contingency and the design, are those, that's just automatic?
Yeah,
Is that
that's-
an assigned amount? Where does that
It's
10% come from?
It's a 10% of the cost of the district itself. So if, say, we went out and bidded the contract and it was like $246,000, it's 10% of that, what he's estimated.
Oh, the design and bidding?
Yeah, that would be
Fees
10% of
would
the
be-
cost of the project itself.
Okay, so we wouldn't pay more, we wouldn't pay less?
Now, contingency usually is what,
The contingency we
yeah.
would, but the design and bidding cost?
that one you'd have to ask, our,
Is that-
Mitch would have to address that.
That is a hard number. It's per the contract with our consultant. Their fee is based on the awarded construction amount,
Okay,
and that is the fee.
so that
It-
one we know.
And it's 10% plus or minus. On the bigger jobs, that percentage actually goes down. So like for $1 million job, the percentage would probably be 6%. But on smaller jobs, let's say a $100,000 job or a $50,000 job, that fee actually can go up to 12%. But
Right,
for
because they have-
discussion purposes, 10% is a good number to use.
There's a certain amount of work they have to do regardless of the cost of the
Right,
project, so-
that fee is to prepare the design plans in contract documents.
Okay. And then the legal and administrative, is that, where does that 3% come from? Is that, again, that's just allowed? We're allowed to?
Yeah, we charge that because you have legal and related costs. You have your advertisements, you have your, resolutions, things like that. So usually it comes around 3% of the cost of the bidding.
Do we just add a 3%, or do we actually put the actual cost in if we know? I mean, we don't know administration, but legal for us, we know, because we don't have our own attorney. We would be billed
Yeah, we
for
do
that.
put it in. It's part of the actual special assessment district.
The actual, so whatever
Yep,
the
whatever
bill
comes-
from
yep.
the attorney is what goes in there?
Yep.
Okay, so this 3%, so these amounts are just an estimated
Yes,
amount?
they- yes.
So the 3% is
Yeah, it's an
estimated?
estimated, yes.
Okay, continue, I'm sorry.
So when we do a special assessment district, if the township borrows the money, things like that, we then incur, or we have interest. So we charge 1% above the cost of the bond, what we've borrowed the money. And that comes back to the township. Now, if the township takes it out of their general fund, we then charge 1% of the mortgage rate, the current mortgage rate, and we charge that against the district. And they pay that under the unpaid balance of their special assessment, like Rose Lawn and Meadow Lane. We charge them the 1% over, and if they don't pay it off, then they pay interest to us, back to us, on the unpaid balance on a yearly basis. And if it's a 10-year roll, then they'll pay over the 10 years.
Okay, so if we actually borrow the money to pay for it, we're getting 1% above that.
Yep.
I understand. But if we don't, we just use,
No, we do use 1% above the cost, it's the mortgage rate cost is what the APO says.
oh, okay, so
Yep.
regardless, they're,
Re-
would they be
regardless,
charged
it's
a
one-
fair-
yep,
a fa-
it's 1%
we're-
above it.
We're charging a fair amount.
Yep.
Okay, so that's very helpful, because I didn't understand that part of it, and I was thinking, is this costing us to?
No,
to
we're
bond?
recouping the cost. The only thing is the sidewalks, we're not charging interest on the sidewalks, and the board has decided to do that over a 5-year period. So we don't recoup any interest. If they pay the invoice in full, we're fine, but if they pay over a 5-year period, then that is, the township does not collect any interest on that. Most other districts, we charge an interest rate, but the sidewalks, when you approve the sidewalks, we did not approve an interest rate on that. It was no interest at all. And you're allowing those people to pay over a 5-year period, if they chose. That is one of their choices.
If they chose to just do it get their own contractor, or even if it was our contractor and they pay off that first.
They would pay them directly. That wouldn't come through the township at all.
Okay, but we're still charge them these fees?
Only if we did the repair. Say if you had a
Okay, so
sidewalk
if
in
they
front of your
hire-
house and you had one slab that they had to repair, you're only gonna pay for that one slab.
All right,
But these costs are included in that per foot fee. The administration costs and things like that, that's included in the.
but if they
per-
do the work themselves, we never get that money. Am I correct?
Yes, but we're not paying it out either.
Well, some of it we are.
Well, some of it we would be, but not, at least not the construction cost.
Okay,
But
so-
yes.
Do we have a sense of, this is where I was wondering, is this costing us money? Do we have a sense of how many, we've only done one so far?
Yes, we've only done one. We
So
haven't.
do we have a sense of how many people are paying upfront?
I have not done that analysis. We just sent out the bills. I can give you that on what we have charged.
Oh, we haven't
but-
even collected?
Yeah,
We
we've
don't
made them
even
due
know
December
yet?
1st, yes.
We don't
we've-
even know yet if.
Yeah, we've made them all due December 1st, the first payments, but I can give you a list of how much we've collected so far.
Okay. Is that something, let's say if it's really, we're not collecting all that it's costing us because many people are paying
A lot of
is
people
that
are paying
something we
upfront.
can change?
I have to say that a lot, especially the smaller amounts, they're all paying upfront. They're not going over the 5-year period.
So if we have a lot that are paying upfront, this could cost us some money.
If
Are
they-
you
if they
talking
s-
about like the engineer going and doing the assessment, but the homeowner not going with the township to do it?
Correct, right.
They do their own, so our cost is the cost of the engineer who did that assessment.
Right, and then, so, because we can't roll that into all the other people who, it's on a per foot or per lot, whatever assessment
Yes.
we have?
Yes,
Okay, so that would be helpful to know, once you get that
Yep,
information.
yep,
if we can-
not a problem.
All right, thank you.
Good. Trustee Anderson?
Thank you. We're talking about the sidewalks here. If the homeowners, Jeffels is involved here, there's a 25%.
It's Spalding to Decker is our. The 25% Spalding fee is rolled into the cost of the homeowner. So if it costs the homeowner $10, the construction work costs $10, it's $12.50 total.
Thank you. Welcome, Trustee Joseph. Vicky, go ahead, proceed.
All right. So, moving on to our third question that we had for the budget review request was to review our large capital. For today, everybody already has the list of the capital in the book that they had gotten, the second to last tab. It has everything for 22, 23, 24, but the request really was, hey, we're gonna be spending large dollars in a couple areas. Can we just highlight quickly what they are? So we're gonna go through the 5 departments up there: F&O, engineering, water, sewer, public safety, and IT. And they don't have anything to pass out or anything on the board. It's just really talking about some of their large items that they are going to be doing in 2022. So with that, I'm gonna hand it over to F&O.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay? Sorry. So we're gonna just do a high-level rundown, just item by item of each one of our capital projects. And obviously, as everybody knows, each one of these items will be brought back to the board in great detail and approved individually. So the first item that we have is our vehicle replacement program, which we have $66,130.80. And that's basically, you'll see, we're hoping to bring this in early December. That's going to go over a new model that we're looking at, a partnership with Enterprise, and a leasing model that we've been talking about internally for quite some time. So in December, we're hoping to bring Enterprise in and do a presentation similar to what they're doing in Macomb Township. So we will be discussing that in great detail. The next item is $75,000 for facilities operations equipment, the compact truck loader. We're looking to replace a piece of equipment. The item below that is our security camera upgrade in the main office. That's for $15,000. Basically, the summary of that is in here at the main building, we have some areas that our cameras don't cover, and we want to add some cameras and some additional security features. The next item below that we have in our capital plan is the historic village, the cabin floor. That's pretty self-explanatory. We have an issue where the floor joists are rotted, and we're going to replace those. Also in the historic village, there's the church floor, which we have budgeted just a budget number of $20,000. There has to be some work to repair the floor in the church, and that's really an ongoing investigation, but we wanted to have a placeholder in the budget. The item below that we have is our senior center landscaping and branding. The simple summary of that is we've done a lot of work around the senior center, and Amanda and the team, we've had multiple discussions about doing some branding. When you pull up to the senior center, as you notice, the only way you can tell it's a senior center is it says senior center on the outside awning. So with the park that we just put in, we want to kind of put a formal sign and some branding on the outside and just some landscaping and flowers to make it more inviting. So we put a placeholder in there for $40,000. And also below that, in regards to the senior center, it says in your book, it should really be phase 2. That's phase 2 of our park, which is a CBDG funded grant, so most of that is reimbursable. That's for $107,980. That is for our pavilion on the outside of the senior center for our senior park, which we've talked about, and we are moving forward. We're excited about that. Moving on, another one of our big capital items is for public safety. So in Fire Station 3, we plan to do a boiler and HVAC upgrade, and we have $185,000 budgeted for that. That is there's a large rooftop that's been problematic for the last year, and we are hoping to get that replaced next year. In the Brandenburg Fund is our next one for $58,000. That was going to be done this year, but it's the asphalt pathway that actually caps. We have a temporary pathway. If you recall, when we did our Brandenburg Park shoreline project, we got that temporary stone pathway funded through the park project, and we're going to cap it with asphalt. But because we wanted to see it settle in and not rush to put the asphalt on and have problems down the road, we decided to push it into next year. So that's what that $58,000 is for. And that pretty much covers our big capital items. If you have any questions, sorry.
Perfect, seeing no questions. Oh.
That was approved in our township dollars towards the project. So the township had a contribution outside of the grant amount, and that was included in that contribution. So we haven't spent that money yet.
So the
sorry, the original question was the 58,000 that you referenced in the pathways near the shoreline. The question was, is that part of the original approval amount for the project? I understood the answer is yes. It's just a matter of when it could be done. And so, because you were waiting for the path to settle, and now next year, the 58,000 allocated for the cap will be utilized, correct?
Yes.
So the total amount for the project and what's left, as it relates to the township portion, do you know that?
We have approximately, I think it's $110,000 in matching funds that we have to spend. And actually, they reached out to us Wednesday on our project call and said that they'd like us to go back and see if there's any additional things that we can find, because we have some money left in the project. So we're in really good standing there.
Okay, and the 58 comes out of the 110?
Once our total township contribution, I want to say, was 169,874.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And then the other question that I had, as it related to the historic village, I know that we were, I think, all in agreement on the ramp, the wheelchair ramp that was put in, and the previous ramp, which was wood and not safe. So I understood the safety concerns about needing to maintain township property. Historically, has the village always, because it seems like now we're getting expenses that are not consistent with what I always thought that the historic village was sort of like a standalone area, and now we're doing building maintenance in there. And so who from the township can give an overview of what the anticipated cost of the historic village is? It's not something that's been, that I recall, part of our normal budgeting process, and it seems like now we're actually incorporating what would be building maintenance and, upkeep in the general fund budget. So I guess, when did that start, and what's our plan moving forward in terms of an overall understanding of what the historic village costs to maintain and, provide safely?
So, you're right, you're correct. There was, that's always been a general fund expense, and it was been limited. But as the need has arisen, there were expenses that began to grow. That is something that we'll address in future budgets, and how we address that. I've got a couple of ideas that we're looking at to seek outside funding to supplement that, but in the meantime, you're absolutely correct that everything comes from the general fund, and there is allocations and requests from facilities or the historical village themselves to address their needs financially there to maintain that site. And it quite honestly, it could, I can't speak to the schoolhouse replacement, but had that been a general fund expense, I think it was a lot of money.
If I just, speaking on behalf of, as a member of the Historical Society longer than I've been on this board here, those buildings were all brought in by fundraising. Maybe the log cabin, I think the township paid for that, but the rest were brought in by fundraising from the Historical Society. And any maintenance on them was pretty easy to just take care of by the Historical Society memberships. But those buildings they're at a stage now where they need like floors and roofs. Those are larger than just replacing windows and caulking, things like that. So that's why you're right, we never had those on the these amounts before, but it's due to the age of those buildings right now. And we were able to, that steeple, or the bell tower was very expensive, but we got a generous donation from someone.
Long-term, it's something that we definitely need to address and look forward to some sort of funding mechanism to take care of it and maintain it.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
In my short time here, I just go back to, the conversation with the township's legal counsel was, it's on our property, it's your liability, you let people in there, you better maintain it. And that's what we
Exactly right, and I think that was an effective sort of message when we started talking about the dilapidated ramp and the presentation on a metal ramp and on a proper ramp and so forth. But when the chapel came over, the cost to move the chapel was a huge fundraising effort. And I don't think that the board ever said, hey, moving that building now creates a maintenance obligation. And so the Historic Village has sort of operated, they have their own board and we have a liaison there, but there have been no policies from the board. It's great to get the building in, but then you also have now a sort of in perpetuity, as long as that's on the township grounds and the township holds functions there to make sure that that building is safe. And it wasn't an expense that was ever discussed. It was always just seen as the building comes in and that's a great addition. And I don't know that anyone at that time was thinking, hey, and now you're talking about something other than Mr. Rivard, blacksmithing a hinge for the door. You're talking about a roof or a floor or a ramp or, safety. And this should have a more permanent fixture in the budget for these types of things, and a regular maintenance, like assessment, because we have residents going in there. We have an obligation to their safety, and I don't think I've ever seen, reports other than what the Historical Society will say, hey, we're being flooded, can we get gravel, can we, basic small things. These are now, fairly substantial line items.
I'm not sure, did we add a line item in that, back when the board approved the porch repair? I thought we added a line item for Historical Village specifically.
That was capital, so it went under capital. We can, that's something that, under the board's direction, if we want to create a separate department and have it be the Historical Village Department, there's a lot of different available reporting mechanisms that I can do, if that's something that you guys, or if that's something that we're leaving it as is this year, because we're as far as we are in the game of 22, but in rolling out 23, we can discuss actually making another department for them.
Okay.
Departments tend to bring staff, and I think we have I don't know if I was to pick a department, it wouldn't be you, probably be you. It would be a leisure services, I would imagine, item. It is a very park-like environment. I don't know that an entire, will we have a Historic Village staff member?
No,
and a
so when you look at the
director?
budget, you'll see there's the Anchor Bay Pump Station, or it's just separated or designated so you can tell exactly what it is, and it's a tracking mechanism. So the word department isn't meaning you have a department, a department head, an activity. This is just something that would be a tracking for really, really transparent what goes in historically for the Historical Society.
No, pump station, you could say Public Works. There'd be somebody in Public Works that would give us reports on the condition of the pump station. The Historic Village is a standalone. It has multiple buildings that require maintenance and upkeep, and who's responsible for that? Right now, we have a good relationship with the committee, and we'll find out through maybe the liaison during committee meetings, but there's not a staff member who's responsible for making sure that the grounds are safe. And so that should be something we know before we have people, with splinters in their hands or, not safe passage into buildings. It should be a routine. When we get to emergency repairs, they just get more costly. And so if we're going to be allocating, substantial monies to the Historic Village, somebody should be responsible for that, to bring to the board things that need to be repaired or replaced.
Understood, and a good point. That's something we'll definitely take out of here today and put it in a proper department.
Just a real quick follow-up, that is, even when other people were overseeing the work over there, that typically went to what is now facilities and operation, but it would always, there is someone that, I think the buildings are on the inventory now, things like that, correct? Yeah. So, but that can be fleshed out some more. And then the other thing, the world was real important too. Oh, the policy of accepting donations. I've brought that up too with the supervisor. We need to come up with a policy, so I agree with you, because it's more than just the historic village. People give us a flagpole, so when that flagpole in 10 years, it needs to be repaired, painted, whatever, are we gonna do that? How do we wanna handle that? We're gonna set money aside, we're gonna ask for a deposit, but anyway, it's something to be fleshed out, not part of the budget process.
If I may, we have had discussion, the treasurer and trustee Vosberg, and we've had discussions recently, but prior to that, we have crafted, I worked with Mr. Siebert to have a basic donations procedural directive with an agreement regarding what would be the conditions of accepting gifts in the future, because the township has no current instrument that says for anything from flagpoles to memorials to buildings, there's nothing that says what the responsibility is of the gifter, what's the responsibility of the township upon accepting it. So it gets a little complicated in the sense about, we know we assume liability when it comes on the property. That's well decided. But really what you do and what the expectations are when something needs repair, is a donor expecting it to be fully, repaired by the township in perpetuity? Is there funds going to be set aside? Will there be an escrow fund? Will there be a perpetual care fund set up for that donation along with it? There's a number of things the township has accepted right now, and even in recent years, that there's really not a plan. So by default, the way Michigan law works is if it's on your property and it's your appurtenance of some type, and if you insure it, then you're responsible for it, and you have to go out and ask for funds if you want outdoor funds. The supervisor has initiated an overall review of a separate organization. I don't know, you probably don't want to speak to that tonight, but it is an organization that would be for general fund raising, support, and betterment of the community. So there are a number of vehicles. The bottom line is the policy or directive may be turned into an APO that the board would adopt about the receiving and accepting of gifts and the conditions that go with it.
So one of the, as was mentioned, one of the things trying to create is some sort of community foundation where we can take these in and maintain the care. I'm just in the infancy stages of researching that and getting legal opinions and getting the proper documents found out. But it's going to take a while, but it would address exactly what you're speaking to. Any further questions, F&O? Engineering.
Good evening. We have the Zone 2 sidewalk replacement program scheduled for next year, and also the Zone 1 sidewalk gap program. For the replacement program, we're scheduled only to repair the number 5 rated sidewalks, which are the worst ones. And for the gap program, it will be on the south side of 23 Mile Road from Macomb Township to Gratiot and down to the bus station. There's some substantial gaps in there which we will fill in as a part of that program. Most of those, the gap program, most of that will be assessed to the property owners. There are a couple of spots across the railroad tracks and public right-of-ways where the Township General Fund would have to pay for that. And then the other thing is in Brandenburg parking lot. We are gonna seal the cracks and reseal the parking lot, which is the $164,000 estimated project cost. And I guess it's sheet 2 of the capital improvement plan.
Okay, if we have no questions on engineering, water and sewer.
Good evening, all. Oh,
Well, the reason I had asked for some of these capital improvements was just so that we could have a discussion, because, did you talk about the 400,000 for the roads?
Oh, I'm sorry. We also have yeah, very good point. We do have a placeholder in there for 400,000 for county road projects. We're in the process of submitting projects to the county to have shared funding with the county road commission. Depending on what project gets approved for next year, if it's something like the North Bay Industrial Sub, which is a very big project, that 400,000 might change. If it's a smaller project, say, Sugar Bush from Callens to Jefferson, if we submit that project to the road commission, then that 400,000 would probably go down. So we're in discussions with the county about a shared project for next construction season. So the 400,000 is a kind of a placeholder number, and it is kind of, it'll probably, obviously be more or less than that.
So that's an item that we haven't typically put into our budget. That's a brand new item. And the cost share of what I always remind people is the responsibility of the county Department of Roads, but if we want our residents to be safe, sometimes we just have to.
Again, the
Do
short time
this.
I was here, one of the biggest complaints that came up was county projects and road improvements, and there was never a funding amount that was placed in there. One of the very first things we did as a group was sit down and number one, seek out grants, seek out what the county was going to do for the township, which it wasn't real clear. We've, as you have been involved in several meetings with them, trying to create our own roads group within the township to see if we could bring in some additional support for the road. But when it all boils down, it's how much money do you have and what do you want to participate with us in? So that's, as was stated, the 400,000 is a reasonable amount based on the projects that we identified. We do have an identified list of roads in the township that need repair and that have been submitted either through the TIP program or through the county's program. And again, the 400,000 is kind of our share portion of what we're expecting to pay.
But what is the share of our cost of a county road? Like, I thought our share of a county road was zero. So when we pony up 400K, I have a feeling we're gonna be at a board meeting, we'll exhaust that immediately, and then we're gonna exhaust 400K immediately, and then we're gonna be looking to go deeper into the general fund, because you're gonna have something that is equally in disrepair as something we've already repaired. And I think the placeholder, in essence it is, because we know that, well, an earmark, I guess, because we don't know where we're gonna spend it, but you have like, listening to Mitch, the 400K is a drop in the bucket when you start looking at some of these projects. So it is like a Band-Aid on a chainsaw wound, and it's not our wound. I mean, we're held hostage because our residents are the ones that are impacted. But once we put the 400K there, I think we might as well just make that part of our, yearly, because there's not enough. There's not enough for us to take on road projects. I think there was great debate when we discussed the 200K but we weren't united in that, because there's some really strong opinions about this is a county road. This is what the county is responsible for. So, always looking for partnerships when it's like absolutely. But now we're planning. Now we're saying we know at least 400K is probably what we can spare this year, but it's going to be as much next year. And then what happens with the negotiation where the county goes, well, maybe you need to come to the table with 700K the following year. This is a county function.
The conversations that we have is exactly that, and they've been extensive. You're spot on. The problem with the share program that the county offers is exactly that. You have to bring money to the table, and you have to be prepared to pay, or it's just not going to get done. And we're left with exactly what you described. If you don't have money, we're not interested, we'll go elsewhere.
I'm sorry to, I don't wanna filibuster this, but so we come to the table with 400K. And what is that extortion note get us? Does that get us another 400K? They'll match dollar for dollar? So why can't we just get the 400K that they were planning to match with us, and we'll do half the jobs in our township? Right? If we said we're gonna bring $1 million, can we just get you to do $1 million worth of work then, and then we'll, like, they're matching. They're saying they're matching, but like they want to gauge the seriousness of the problem by like draining our general fund. Like, so we have to show that we're serious about people not losing like axles to get to the grocery store, and we got to pony up.
Briefly, we did submit 3 projects for federal funding, but they wouldn't start till, I believe, 2025. So we submitted one for 2025, 2026, and 2027. In those projects, the township share would be 10%. The feds pay 80%, and the county pays 10%. So that's the best project for the township. So we're paying, let's say, $100,000 on $1 million project. So we submitted 23 Mile Road for a road reconstruction to that federally funded project. I think we submitted Chesterfield from 23 down to Gratiot and also realign it. And the third project escapes me. But it's one project per year. We would pay 10%, but those projects wouldn't start till 2025. These projects are 60-40 match, 60% township, 40% county. And we would probably try and get like a blended funding, maybe special assess, maybe assess the property owners that are benefiting, and then also add general fund to come up with our 60%. Roselawn and Meadow Lane are 2 recent projects where the county paid 50% and the township paid 50%, but through special assessment. On those projects, the property owners paid the township half.
Just to get to their house.
Right.
They couldn't do anything with the roads because the road doesn't belong to them. But if they're willing to pay half, then, so what are they left with? They're doing the same thing to us. Now we've got a program. It's a shared program. It's not even halvesies, 60-40. I missed that part. So, I don't know what we do, but I don't like earmarking the 400K because it's a drop in the bucket. And it's just bad policy. I think when we start down this road, boards 2, 3, 4, terms down the road are just, might as well just incorporate road maintenance as part of a general fund responsibility in the township. Township wasn't constructed under those parameters. There's no way we could do that with our tax base and our revenue base. There's absolutely zero way to maintain these roads in that arrangement.
Any further? Trustee Anderson?
Following up on that, I can't recall the last 8 years, I might have missed some where we went along with the county, but it was a.
Take David's mic, because they're recording.
Oh, so far last year, we moralistically went with the 26 in Gratiot improvements. The township kicked in on that. Then the Myers, in front of Myers, 23 Mile Road, township kicked in on that. And I'm just wondering, and then I understand there might be some issues with lighting, dealing with the county. It just seems like we've opened up Pandora's box or whatever in dealing with the county here, and where's it all gonna stop? Especially, I think the repairs on 23 Mile Road, wasn't it like, tell me, the one repair was 5% the county, 5% us, and then 80% the feds? I mean, the county's putting, they're doing it, and if there's there's no profit on those things, but we're kind of left the township just help pay for this stuff. And again, we're talking about just, that could be a big hit moving forward, and we're creating a culture there. I don't know what we can do about it, but maybe we got to back off of those things.
Well, Understood, and your comments are understood. Again, if any of these projects that come, we're gonna have to bring to the board and see if you approve them at that point anyways for this expense. So, right now, this is just trying to forecast planning, trying to address some needs that have been pointed out, and at least get a conversation going about roads.
Just a final observation, this is for the board, is already getting emails from residents that are seeing repairs done here or there. You know, there was a bunch of hay, they were happy about heading up 23 Mile Road into Macomb Township, they're happy. But I've got emails from some residents now, what about our street, when are we next? You might have had the one, you did all that stuff over around the township compound, what about our street? You know, and these streets are county roads and they're a nightmare, so button up.
Yep. All right. Good evening. So like those two departments, we have quite a lot on our plate as well. I guess I'll start at the top of our list. The most interesting one we have is the advanced metering infrastructure project we're working on. This came about because the software that we currently use for reading meters is no longer supported by Neptune, which means come December 31st, if there's any issues with their software or if there's an upgrade to a computer in our system, and that update could potentially make our software not work. So we need to upgrade our software. So in that process, we looked at what makes sense to just upgrade the software, continue reading meters, or go to this advanced metering infrastructure, which means that we will place, say, 10 to 12 poles around the township, and the readings will come to our township versus us having to drive around. The most beneficial thing of this is currently, with us reading and driving around, we read meters once every 90 days. So it's one reading every 90 days. The new software will allow us to get hourly readings on meters. So if there's ever an issue, we'll get alerts in the software database in the office, and now we can reach out to the residents and alert them that there's an issue with their meter. There's, seems to be running water. We're not sure what it is, but it seems like abnormal use, and we can now proceed to let residents know and alert them more frequently than currently. I ran a report, had a laser run report today. We had 266 accounts that used over 50,000 gallons in one quarter this year. 230 of those, it was one time they went over 50,000 gallons. That is not including sprinkling. So at some instance, they had an issue where they used a lot of water. I have more details in the back of that. So, but there's a lot of instances where water's used a lot. It could be a broken pipe. A lot of times it's water backup sump pumps. Or if they're on vacation, that thing runs, it can happen real fast. So even toilet leaks, that adds up real fast. So it'll help residents a lot in that regard. I'm hoping to eventually get this system to where we could have residents sign up for it, to where they get alerts, they can see their usage, and they can actually go on the phone and see what they're doing live. So that'll be an addition to that project, but that'll be an exciting one that we have moving forward. On top of that, Jefferson Phase 1 as a project for water main will be the most important one this year. So as you guys know, Jefferson area of our township is the oldest area of our township. Jefferson was built in 1957, so we're going on 65 years old. And with the houses, to the east of that being, higher end houses, we need to replace Jefferson before we can replace any water main in those subdivisions. Because we got to make sure there's enough valves on that line so we're not killing a mile of road to repair things. So we're going to be replacing Jefferson from Hall Road to 21 Mile Road, and we also incorporated Hall Road east of Jefferson because that water main is in disrepair as well. We've had over 20 water main breaks in the last 20 years, so one break a year doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're a resident losing water once a year, that can be frustrating. On top of that one, the other construction project we have is Peggy Lane. That is probably one of the worst roads we have in terms of water breaks in our township. We've had over 14 water breaks in the last 10 years. That was built in '71. We know that street very well. The neighbors, they know us very well. So we're looking to get that replaced so they can not get to know us for a long time. So we'll be doing that along with Seaton, which is where the Bank of America is down to Bauer. We're going to replace that section as well. Because it just kind of makes sense in that time frame. and what's kind of going on, as well as Short Court, which is a court off of Peggy Lane. And then in terms of design, we're going to be doing Jefferson Phase 2. So the goal is to phase in Jefferson over a 6-year period. So over 6 years, we're looking to go from Hall Road all the way to Brandenburg Park to get the water main replaced. And at that point, we'll continue to focus going east or west, but mostly east, because that is the oldest section of the township. As well as designing 23 Mile Road Phase 2, which will just be adding valves every 700 feet from our PRV station at 24 and Fairchild, which is where we tie into Great Lakes Water Authority, all down Chesterfield Road to 23, then 23 Mile Road across 94. So we're looking at adding about 18 valves. Right now, there's a valve every mile. So we have to kill, if there's an issue on Maurice, we have to kill everything from 94 to 23 Mile Road on, 94 to Gratiot on 23, just to have an issue on Maurice. So it's not great. So we kill a lot of businesses and a lot of homes. So that'll be an important one that we're actually really excited about getting done. As scary as dealing with 23 Mile Road is, it'll be definitely a benefit for everybody. On top of that, the next one will be Sutton Road Water Main. That is another problem area for us. That one was also built in '57. That water main is right under the road. I know the county, I believe, has earmarked that for replacement in the future. So we want to get that done before the road gets replaced. And obviously with these projects, we are working with Mitch and the county stuff. So as projects come up with roads getting replaced, we're trying to make sure that water main is getting replaced before roads go in, so we're not putting a new road over Old Main, because that's just inviting problems. Along with that, so there's a Baker Road sanitary sewer extension. So there's a subdivision going in at the corner of Baker and Washington on the northwest corner. Our cost share agreement, which the board approved, I believe it was back in 2019, was we're paying for the upsized cost of that. So they needed like a 15-inch, I think an 18 inches going in. So we're just paying the difference, because our master plan calls for a bigger main to service the northeast corner of the township. So that's just our share of that. The not so fun one is the interceptor lining project. So without going into too much detail, there's a 27-inch interceptor that the county currently, I want to say, quote unquote, owns, that we are responsible for the maintenance of. We have paid zero maintenance on that main through any of our sewer bills. Right now, the estimated cost for the lining of that is going to be $3.5 million. The goal is to get that line next year. That is probably the most important sewer project we have in our township. That affects about 6,000 homes. I forget if residents or homes, Mitch, I don't remember. Residential, yeah. So it's a quite a huge chunk of our township that's on that line. So we want to make sure that it's cheaper to line it than to have it potentially fail and have to fix it in an emergency situation. So we're looking to do that as well. And then two minor, I guess I'll call them minor, but we have to replace our loader. Our loader is 30 years old. So right now we're looking at either purchasing or leasing. I know we talked with the supervisor. There's a possibility of leasing equipment, so we're looking into a potential leasing option to see if that makes more sense to lease over a 5-year time frame versus, similar to the vehicle program. And then we need to replace our step van, which is the van we use whenever we have a water break or major issue. That thing goes out and does a lot of heavy lifting. That thing is beyond in need of repair. And right now, like many vehicles, that thing is 20 weeks out before we can even get a sample to look at something. So that's definitely need a repair or replacement without a doubt. And then a minor one is this Telstar pump station decommission. That pump station has been not in use since I've been here 23 years. I have not seen it in use. So it's basically just getting it safe. There's a canister that's above ground that any kid could cut a lock, open it up, and then fall 30 feet down. So we need to literally cut it, fill it, and be done. So it's more of a safety thing than anything. Obviously, we check on it, we make sure it's okay, but it's definitely a safety hazard. We want to get rid of it. We want to get rid of it because it's not even being used. We have very good lock. I guess that's everything I have. That was a fast run through. I apologize. But if there's any questions, I'm welcome any questions.
Trustee Vosper.
I have one. Is that $3.5 million project, is that the one that there might also be money from the county public works?
Yeah, there's 600,000-ish of the township funds that the county has, it'll go towards that.
So this 3.5 million, that's not net of that. There could be more
That
coming
does
toward
not,
that.
that is not deducting that money from that. That is the total cost of that project.
Okay, and is that 600,000, that's not,
That 600,000 is already recorded on our books, though.
it is on our
So
book.
when
Yes.
you see $3.5 million, you
That
might be
will
talking
be-
out of two different areas, but it is all under cash, under the financial statements.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to know, thank you.
Trustee Anders?
Geographical area, that sewer line, where's that one at again? You're talking about a 3.5 mil reline.
That one goes along 94 from roughly 24 mile down to 21 mile along 94.
Doesn't the town, or the county still have ownership of that for a couple more years?
Yeah, I mean, technically, I mean, I guess this could be a longer conversation. We could be here for another hour, but essentially, you know, it is either we repair it ourselves or they repair it and bill us for it. So it's a matter of how you want to, either way we're paying for it. It's just a matter of how you want to pay for it. I guess, long
That is-
story short.
That is the one that's in negotiations with the county
Yeah.
right now. And Attorney Siebert's been managing that. Trustee Joseph?
Yeah, again, we had, the last formal discussion that we had was the county turned over, here's your sewer pipe. We met, and the discussion was, thanks for the offer, but we're gonna decline acceptance of that pipe, and that's where it is. So we had a brief presentation on, you know, technically, we didn't pay this, but that's an attorney negotiated issue. The board's position of record is that pipe belongs to the county, and then the 600,000 that was attached to the original proposal, there was a delegation from the township that met with the Public Works office, and the handling of the 600K was to say that that's unrelated to, we're not obligated to put the 600K into this. So we would like our 600K, and so you're saying that we received it. We have that in our
No.
cash
No,
now.
No, historically, the money is actually held at the county.
Yeah.
But because it's our money, this has, you know, been this way for years and years, that in the financial statements, I actually have a journal entry or record the fact that there's cash, and then whenever they earn interest, they let us know what we've earned, and I will record the interest as a revenue. And that's an accounting rule of it.
Yes, so I don't know how the township does it. I loaned my brother some money. I don't put it into my budget for next year. Like, he's holding it, but I can't spend it. So we can't spend that money. It shows up in our account as cash, but it's just a line item. It's not
So that
our
piece,
money.
The nice thing about, for accounting, you have the dual-sided journal entries. So the other side is, it is a restricted fund balance. So it does show that it's not cash available to spend, but it is, in all intents and purposes, our money. And again, there's a lot more that
Sure.
goes on with
Yeah,
legal
I'll
stuff.
move
Yeah.
along, because like, cash, money is one purpose, you spend it. You can't spend it, you don't have cash. I don't understand the accounting of this, but I appreciate the original question, which is, so we're really looking at 2.9 million, and then the first question is 2.9 million into a pipe that we don't own. That pipe belongs to the county. We have not accepted the transfer of that pipe, and we are currently in negotiation. So putting it in our budget and talking about it as it's a real expense, I'd like to put the 3.5 in the same column that you put the 600K, and we can just say, for all intents and purposes, we've repaired the 3.5 million. The other thing that I had a question on was the Neptune advanced metering. So that would allow us to do hourly readings, and we could eliminate the process of sending staff to do quarterly readings. So 90 days is what I thought you said we currently have, which is, you know, basically the billing cycle, one per billing cycle. In the presentation that you bring to the board, I'd be really interested in knowing the cost savings associated with the reduction of worker hours. So if we don't have a vehicle and staff, getting a reading on every home in the township or every customer in the township every 90 days, there should be a realized savings in work hours that would offset the 300K. So to say it's an improvement and it reduces work hours, we should also reflect that in the presentation. So what will the savings be? And, I don't know how many hours and how much fuel and how many vehicles are associated with that. And then the last comment, just doing like napkin math here on the water and sewer fund, you've outlaid about $22 million worth of projects that are like ready to go, that they need to go ASAP. And what is the plan for the expenditure of $22 million? Because I don't know that we have it.
Well, right now for 2022, I mean, we're probably looking at roughly 9. I mean, I think it's 22 if you're looking for all 3 years. It's just.
No, I'm just looking on the page, the capital improvement plan, the list that you ran down. Just water and sewer is roughly, give or take, 22 million. I just kind of rounded off,
Right.
But 22 million, we don't have anywhere near that. So what is the plan for that operation?
Well, that 22 million's over a 3-year period. That's not all in 2022. 2022, you're looking at roughly, let's just say 8 million, even though that's still a lot of money. That's to be determined. I know we've talked about potentially using, again, I know Arpa Funds gets thrown to every department because we're all going to be using $4 million. So I welcome that to my department, but.
So
but
with the
that's a
sidewalk
conversation to be had.
replacement plan?
Right, exactly. So, but that'll be a discussion.
And leisure
we have.
services might, I don't know, do you want a chunk of that too? No, you don't? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further? Thank you.
Great. And then, public safety, do you want to highlight your,
That's awesome. We get to follow them. You got small change here. The first thing on the public safety on the police side is a use of force simulator. Essentially what this thing does is allows us to cover the 16 different areas the Supreme Court wants us to train in without having to actually discharge a firearm. It allows for us to shoot in low light, high light, decision-based, multiple targets, shoot, no shoot, deploy less lethal, including taser, blunt force instruments, flashlights. So anything that you might have to use in a use of force situation, you can do in the simulator without ever actually having to touch anybody or shoot anything downrange. That's what that is. The $18,000 for the message board. We've had numerous instances in the township where it would be nice to be able to tell our citizens what's going on, whether it's a shutdown on 94, a water main break, a police situation, a subdivision, a house fire. This board, the concept is we'd be able to deploy it quickly, put a message up on there and route citizens around the trouble, or at least give them some information how they could get additional information in reference to that incident. Correct. Yep. The $50,000 for a license plate reader. We talked about at the last board meeting, the LPRs have been handled. However, there still could be a need for a security camera. This was actually the original project we wanted, is we wanted a camera that we could deploy to an area, be able to monitor that area live from dispatch, whether it is an incident going on that we need to keep public safety involved in, or it could be just a high crime area that we want to monitor. Could be we have an event coming up like the air show that we want to monitor a particular area. That's what that is. It's a security camera that can be deployed anywhere we might need it. And dispatch could live monitor, emergency management could live monitor it if we needed to. It has many different uses, and that's what that line item is. Our last thing to discuss is something we do every single year, and that's replacing our vehicle fleet. So right now, we're geared for approximately 5 cars next year, and that's full equipment in them. They're changing them, so we have to get all new equipment. We did put a little buffer in there because we were concerned about the chips and how the cost of everything is going up. And this was something that was kind of planned on Supervisor back in March, I think, is when you kind of said this is going to be an issue. We need to earmark this. Do you want to
Chief
ask me
Miller?
questions or move to Craig?
Chief Miller?
Craig?
Let's move Greg.
All right.
Good evening. Capital improvement items for fire department that we're looking at for 2022. First item, we have the fire department server room backup dispatch. Many of the things that we have listed here are basically some maintenance upkeep for some older equipment that are coming up on end of life. So updating our electrical in the backup dispatch that we have over at Fire Station number 3 on 23 Mile. Probably the biggest item that impacts public safety on the fire side is going to be new self-contained breathing apparatus for the fire department. One of the things we're doing with our request here is we're going to right size a little bit. Initially, we had 40 breathing apparatus, and this figure reflects on us downsizing that to a total of 28, which we still feel will be operational, won't have any effect on the service we can provide or anything along that line. Another item which was identified in our strategic planning for the department and in getting prepared for the accreditation that we plan to do next year is a station alerting project, which is the way that we can have dispatch flash notify the stations that we have an alarm coming in. This is done through computer-aided dispatch rather than by radio signal and that sort of thing. Upgrades to server and software. The next thing after that would be the vehicle replacement program. You'll see that we have $90,000 set aside for that. That's part of the heavy rescue project that we came to the board with earlier this year. And we have been successful in selling the 2 medium-duty rescue trucks that we had in the fire department. And our goal is to, with our changing role in special teams, hazmat, technical rescue and everything, is to move over to this new heavy rescue type vehicle. So that brings us to $593,000 altogether.
We're still waiting for delivery on a new truck, a big one. It's no longer.
You know what they told us? COVID has delayed it. I don't know if you can believe that.
So what century is it coming?
There, yeah. The last update they gave us, and we just spoke with CSI out in Colorado, was August of 2022. Yeah. Fingers crossed.
Trustee Joseph?
Yeah, I just had one quick comment, not even a question. I remember hearing a presentation, it was actually at the training academy, when the participants were coming forward with their sort of like what happens at Staff and Command, and somebody had done a presentation about the inventory and maintenance of those tanks. Mm-hmm. It's not just the total number of tanks. Like so we budget for 40 tanks. You go out and buy the tanks. You also have an incredible maintenance obligation to those because the expiration, mm-hmm. and there's constant sort of evaluating what tank is going to expire when. So mm-hmm. So not only by downsizing do you eliminate the upfront costs of the tank, but all of the hours that go into maintaining the I don't know if this is the right word, the shelf life, that exactly. It expires. And so that is a critical job. Clearly you don't want to be in the middle of something very ugly and not have a properly functioning tank. So the work hours that go along with those tanks is probably not reflected in the savings of that downgrade too, but that's an excellent cost saving mm-hmm. feature that you picked up on there, Chief.
Any other questions for either public safety? Nothing? IT?
Okay, so our big project for next year is that BSNA cloud implementation that was brought to the board in September. And that's converting all our current modules over and then as well adding on payroll, HR timesheet, and work orders. On top of that, we do have the Wi-Fi network upgrade, and that is to replace all our existing Wi-Fi connections here. They're about 6 years old, so they're overdue for that. And then the last one would be our server backup and disaster recovery solution, and that is to have a cloud-based solution here at the Township and DPW. So
Any questions from IT?
Right.
I'll turn it back over to you, Vicki.
Just one, I think this, I hope it's a quick question, I hope the answer is too. We are not currently cloud-based for backup?
Not for the servers. Mm-mm.
Okay,
So that is something for next year.
all right, thank you. Because we do have some stuff out there.
Some programs are in the cloud, but our servers are not. They're actual hard servers here.
All right, thank you.
All right, so moving to our next item, we're going to talk about, quickly going through the next few slides, but we have the Maurice Mink Anchor Bay Pump Station, also known as Bay Harbor. Thank you, Kevin, for correcting my title to make sure that it is accurate and extremely long. We have significant funding considerations, just so we're all on the same page. This is currently not in the 22 budget. There's a total estimated cost of $3.97 million. The study results will be presented at the December 14th, 2021 meeting. The project design would be, this is preliminary, obviously there's going to be a lot of discussions where you guys go into this, but just kind of an idea is project design for 22 with construction in 23. And just discussing the idea, currently we don't have anything in the budget, but you may see something in the amount of like around $200,000 for funding design and bid for the 2022 budget as an amendment. Now, right now, you know, there's a lot of stuff up in the air with it. I don't know if you want to talk about it at all, or if anybody wants to get in any more detail with it.
I can speak to it. I like to talk, so I don't mind. So basically, when the report's going to come back, we'll talk about in the more detail on the 14th. But essentially, where the station stands right now is there's 2 electrics and 2 diesel pumps. 1 electric was pulled, and they found out that it could not be repaired. So that one's basically sitting in chunks in our garage, waiting to be scrapped once this project's underway. We have 1 electric working fine, 1 diesel not working. The other diesel is functioning, but the radiators have holes, so we fill it with water. It has to run so often, it overheats, then we gotta shut it down, let it cool down. So you literally have 1 functioning pump at this station out of 4. That's been that way for about 1.5 years. So I don't really wanna go another 2 years without that. The lead time on pumps right now is looking at 40 weeks, so it's not a short time. So we're already looking at probably April of 2023. So we're going through at least another wet season of having 1 pump. We have backup options, so it's not like, you know, we have that kind of covered, but it's definitely a need to get something moving. 1 pump costs roughly $400,000. So, but this cost will cover everything internally, which again we'll go over at the meeting. But the goal of the 200 is going to be hopefully cover design and bid for the process, and then most of the costs will happen in 23 when everything gets delivered. But that'll just be kind of design and prepping the project.
And again, you guys are going to be going over this in a lot more detail at
Yes.
future meetings, but
Yes.
we figured because there's a significant cost, right now we don't have all the information on the table, you know, SAD, there's just a lot that goes into it. We wanted to make sure that you knew that it was out there, that there's an issue with it, and it will be addressed coming up again.
And I guess just so you know, we are looking at talking with assessing about SAD, that process. We're doing our research, our due diligence to figure out what methods how it's going to work. The 14th is not going to be talking finance. It's just a study of results. Where the money's going to come from is that'll be a separate topic at a later date. That's just more the results of the study.
Trustee Domingue.
Refresh my memory, 4 was Mallard, Book Court, Pheasant, all of Jefferson from Cotton to Salt River. Isn't that what that covers?
It covers from Cotton Road to the section of Sugar Bush that goes from Jefferson to Callens, then from Sugar Bush to
then-
Jefferson, that whole area.
Okay, all right, that's what I thought. All right,
Yep.
thanks. Do you know how many residents that totally covers?
It's estimated 825? 813.
813 current residences. Okay, thanks.
Yep.
All right, moving on to our next topic, the potential revenue sources for general fund services. We have 2 that we're going to briefly talk about. And honestly, a lot of this is just like the administration fee, which we're going to hit up first, is just getting it on the table, acknowledging there's different things that are out there. and what those consist of. The administration fee, which we have done in the past. I don't know if somebody, did you want to go over it specifically, or?
No, we don't have to. I think the illustration is there. It's there just as options to, you know, for the board consideration as you move forward. I talk loud, but I need a microphone. There are a number of things there that you certainly have to deal with in the future. Infrastructure being primary one. We talked about what may certainly be with the Macomb County Road Division, maybe an insane policy of fixing somebody else's product, but it is in the township's future some consideration for contribution to other infrastructure. And there's other costs associated with growth and development that certainly may have to be recognized because they're economic development issues. If we lose certain types of developments, factories, industry, because of infrastructure failing, then certainly the township general fund, as well as others, loses in the big picture of things. So this fee is just put on by the supervisor's office only as a reminder that there's other revenue sources that are available, even in a restricted 1 mil township, for general fund purposes. That does not mean that the board has to, and as Vicki said, it's been on before, it's been used before, it is not being utilized now. So wanted to cover a few of those things during this discussion period. Also, if you're going to grow a department such as Leader Services and look at expanded services there, or acquisition or change in service delivery, it cannot be done within the current revenue streams. So there would have to be significant changes in those. So you should not just look at all of the possible obligations without possible alternatives in order to meet those obligations. English, what are you saying? I'm saying.
So, like, it's not a problem I'm unfamiliar with in my life. I have things that I want to buy, and then I have money in the column that Vicki was talking about earlier. I can't spend it. I don't have it. So if there's no additional money, then you don't get things, right? Is that kind of what you're saying?
That's kind of it. Yeah. You're at a point that, I mean, we are structurally balanced budgets. There is a fund balance. It is sound. We've looked at multiple years. Vicki's put together multi-year financial picture, but I mean, clearly these are additional obligations the township may be considering, and the point to consider those is if the as it was put tonight with a kind of the shakedown from the road division, if you want your roads fixed, you better come with some money. It's got to come from there's a price tag. Funds got to be raised somewhere. Obviously, we have some general obligations from a very large pump station project coming forward to other investments in that type of infrastructure, parking lots, other things that have to come forward. You got to raise the money. So yeah, thank you, Trustee Joseph, for correcting my academic ease. You need money in order to spend money, and you're not going to be able to do it with the finite revenue streams that the township projects. The population's 46,000, didn't grow as much as anticipated, so state collected, locally shared revenues, a bone of mine with them, is certainly not going to increase in the manner that would cover these kind of expenses. There is clearly a time that the property values will start to stabilize, but at the same time, water has to be moved out of drainage areas. Roads have to be repaired in some manner, and there are other things that the township may do considering expanding or changing its recreational programs that it's currently on a very minimal budget to do. And having put together rec departments and recreation authorities, it certainly isn't going to be able to be sustained or grown as maybe is being considered now with expansion of facilities without additional revenue. It's quite simple. And we are realigning, and we will limit staffing, if not be able to be smarter and work with fewer people as technology goes. We want to be technology equipped and service driven, but still money is needed to make these things happen.
All right, and then just on this slide is just the calculation, so it kind of gives you more of a concrete, what would it change? It's about $772,000 for 2022. On our next item is the interfund service transfer. I know we talked about this quite at length at our last meeting. What this slide is just going through is showing at the 22 proposed internal service transfer. That's the one that we had talked about most in depth at our last meeting, and without it and with it. So essentially, you're going to be taking, without the internal service transfer, having a net change in fund balance in general fund of $2,435,913, and that moving to a net change in fund balance of $1,837,183.60. That's it. Remember. Let me, one more time. So the interfund service charge, which we renamed it as, it used to be our administration fee. It's our upgraded name. So it's our old administration fee. That's what we were talking about, where we had, general fund, a charge of about $600,000, charging public safety, building, and water and sewer. And the first presentation of the budget did not have the internal service fund charge in it. So what we were going to demonstrate, now these numbers are updated on where we currently are sitting with the budget, if we did the internal service fund transfer and if we did not do the internal service fund transfer, because obviously doing it will have an impact on all 4 of these funds. I don't know if anybody has any other questions regarding the interfund service.
I thought you said there was like a $1.4 million, something that you said about.
I think if you look up there, so what I was saying is without this transfer.
Yes?
General fund will have a net change in fund balance of this 2.4 million.
Reduction.
Yeah, it will have a reduction of.
That's what I was trying to do the math as you were talking. If there's say $600,000 in play that doesn't go that way, how do you have a net change in the balance of 2.4 million? So it's a $600,000 interfund transfer that somehow is realized as a $2.4 million reduction.
No. So our estimated revenue for general fund is the 7.5.
Yes?
The estimated loss or expense is 9.9. So the overall net change in fund balance would be 2.4, or loss would be 2.4, use of fund balance would be 2.4.
I see. So that's just inclusive of the 600K. Because it looks like the next column is with the IST, it's a 1.8 reduction, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I understand now. I'm a little slow today. Sorry.
No, you're good. We've got, name change, but it's just basically showing if we included it in the budget, if we did not. Was there any other questions or any other talking points with the internal service fund? Again, I know we talked about it extensively at the last meeting. Okay.
Could I make a comment?
Please.
And this is not meant to continue on and on debating, but, because we can do that at another point, but it seems to me the general fund's taken a really big hit this budget cycle, so I really would like to see the IST in the budget, as it has been in the past. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. So our last item, which we're going to kind of end on a happy note, is our ARPA funds. Our ARPA fund award was $4.8 million. We received 50% of our award on November 10th of this year. Just some I know you guys are gonna be talking, the board has a lot of decisions to make on this funding, but the funds have to be encumbered. Basically, we have to say what we're gonna be doing and committing to spend money by December 31st of '24. And all of the funds have to be sent, reports done, everything in and sealed and delivered by December 31st of 2026. So you have time, but also I want to put that out there because a lot of the things that the ARPA funds can be spent on take time in the design and approval process. The revenue expenditures are not included in the '22 budget. This is unearned revenue until the expenditures are incurred. So that's it. Is there any other questions or anything I can at this point go over, or any of the department heads can go over anything that the board has specific questions on, would like to have more like a drill down? And then, of course, please keep in mind too, we have, we have an open door policy. We can schedule an appointment if any of the board wants to come in one-on-one, or even if the board would like to sit down with a particular department to get a better understanding of what's going on in something. Please, please, please let me know, because we would love to sit down and really make sure you have all of the information that you could possibly want on this budget.
Thank you, Vicki. Trustee Joseph.
Vicki, I just had you don't have to answer it if it's not like a direct and too convoluted. But I know you watch the numbers like a hawk. I know that is just who you are. We are now arriving at a 2022 projected budget, best case scenario, including the interdepartment transfers, of a $1.8 million deficit. As we debated, and each one of the issues that were outlined for the 2021 budget and we discussed in 2020, we talked about what the future looked like in terms of being able to cover these costs. We were anticipating, I think, a revenue share that probably would have reflected a census count of, say, 50,000 residents. And I don't know that anybody, well, there were some, but the reduction in the state revenue sharing. So even though we get a bigger piece of the pie as a result of the census, the pie is smaller. The state does not have the same amount of revenue. So there's some of that is, what do you attribute the $1.8 million deficit to?
Yeah, no, a lot of it is capital projected outlays that, a lot of municipals, they will have their either balanced or neutral revenue versus expenditures from year to year, and they will plan for or have the fund balance to have these capital expenditures. If you look at, we have a lot of projects that you guys are doing, which is why I think highlighting the different capital and all the funds was really important. I do have to say, with regards to the state shared revenue, thankfully, when we budgeted it before, we were very conservative with it. So I know that there was a lot of different meetings, and again, that being aside, what we budgeted and what we actually came in at for '21 is pretty spot on. Even with us not hitting the projected 50, at being our 47, we were kind of budgeting that anyway. So that's not really as much of a factor, but again, if we look at our capital, that's going to be a chunk of.
Well, I think every project debate, and it's something that I think we should deliberate on, as a board when they come up. We talk a lot about the projects, need approval from the board when they come, but we begin the approval process for a lot of these projects during the budget committee, because every project that ever comes forward always starts with, well, it was included in the budget. But during budget discussion, we say, well, these are standalone projects that will require board approval. In essence, you've already sort of given like you're on the path of approval. And when we're looking at capital outlay and the acquisition of projects, we've had a tremendous amount of projects, and they cost money. And so we're now getting to the place where, Steve, you kind of redefined. We're literally literally, we're pulling the, rabbit ears out. The pockets are empty. And so how many more projects can we take on, and how many more acquisitions can we make and be able to maintain what we have? Something seriously needs to be discussed during the budget. I don't know if it's time here, but we really got to look at what we're spending on a needs-based, versus what we would want to have, because it sounds like this presentation certainly leaves us with a pretty big upside-down number, and it's a little bit scary, but thanks.
Thank you. Trustee Anderson, nothing? Trustee Vosberg, nothing? So we are available, as Vicky had stated, to continue this discussion, and Trustee Joseph, you're right, there are several areas that need to be refined, and added discussions were available for the next 3 weeks prior to the 12th to have those discussions, and as you say, scrutinize what's been presented. With that being said, any further comments from the board?
And I'll highlight this more during a board meeting. You talk about revenue stream, and we actually have, for the first time since I've been a board member, contemplated action of an administration fee. It's, I don't know how many terms, but I remember campaigning on the idea of eliminating that administrative fee. That brought in, I think at the time, it was about $500,000, and we ended it purposely. And we do have a dilemma in terms of revenue versus expenditures, and we're also considering something that is a potential revenue enhancer if done properly, and that is what the Cannabis Committee worked on for over 2 years. It is a necessary discussion, and I don't think it should happen in a vacuum when we're talking about potentially $2 million in the hole. Again, I know people feel very strongly about it, but before you start considering taxation, we should look at the revenue stream and what would that bring. And I realize there are arguments for problems, that it would bring problems, and people feel very strongly about it, but I would certainly like to look at a revenue stream as opposed to a taxation, and it should at least be a part of an earnest discussion that we have in the passage of this budget. And I'll shut up now.
Thank you. Any further comments? Comments from the public?
Paul Lafata, 48055 Mallard. Let me start with one of the most important things. It's only have 5 minutes to go through this mess. They talked about special assessments and sidewalks, and mentioned Spalding D. Decker's fees. And I went to the hearing on the ordinance and the sidewalks, and I know there was a QBS team, and they picked AEW, OHM, and Spalding D. Decker as our 3 sources for engineering. And nowhere in Spalding D. Decker's contract is there a 25% fee. I'm trying to figure out how this contract or how this business arrangement went down when it's contrary to our QBS documentation. And I'm also really worried about how do we get this expenditure that, if you look at the SAD for phases 1 and 2, is going to be like $1.5 million in Spalding D. Decker's pocket based on 25%. We're going to suck that out of our residents, plus we're going to charge them 2% for the charge if they can't afford it. And a lot of residents are going to be pushed to shove with the economy because it's not going to get any better. But somebody needs to look at that, because I think Spalding D. Decker is way out, and whoever made that contract should get their hands slapped, because nowhere in the QBS documentation and their submission do they have a 25% fee for anything. It's ridiculous. And let's go back to the North Gratiot Interceptor. There's a contract that's good till 2026, and there's three other entities that are in that contract, and that contract has never been broken, and it's still enforced. Talk to your legal counsel. And the problem is there's three other entities that use that pipe for almost 20 years, and they're going to walk away without paying anything. And the problem is Anthony Morocco and Mr. Gordon Wilson from AEW, when they conjured up putting the other line in, never crossed their T's and dotted the I's to amend that contract. And there's responsibility, there's legal responsibility. And if the township just rolls over and bites on $3.5 million, shame on all our elected officials. We need a new township board real soon, real soon. That's kind of ridiculous. Now, the current budget, every one of the departments except leisure services is underwater. Our previous supervisor, Mr. Accavetti, grew government. It's documentation, it's data. From the time he took office and to the time he left, he grew the cost of general government by over $2 million. We're living with that cost right now. There's not enough cost reductions to be financially sustainable. There's got to be more cost reductions. I don't care if you have to break the contract with the full-time elected officials from the department heads, but maybe you want to cut their increase out every year because that's legal. You can't reduce their fees, but that doesn't mean they have to get an increase. Start with your own pocket before you go to the residents, like Mr. Duchesne said, and ask them for money. Give a little bit at the pump because that's kind of ridiculous. And if you're looking at the pump station is there to take the storm water and put it into Lake St. Clair. Almost 70% of the impervious surface that stormwater is collected and goes through that pump station belongs to the county roads. So if you're looking at a big number, you better go to the county first before you look at 800 and some residents for an SAD, because when you go to an SAD, it has to be calculated based on some data. And there's more impervious surface for stormwater runoff from the county roads than there is from my driveway. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any further comments from the public? Any further comments from the board? That being said, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Trustee Deming, second by Trustee Joseph. All those in favor? Opposed? Adjourned at 6:43. Thank you all.